This is a big week for the defense and the biggest insider trading trial in a generation. One of the star defense witnesses is called Richard Schutte, former COO of the Galleon Group. He said this week that Raj Rajaratnam did not trade on insider information. He was just well educated. We are going to bring in right now former prosecutor Doug Burns. He is an InsideTrack regular. He's been joining us throughout this whole, I guess we have to call it a show. I mean, I know it's a trial, but there's been a lot of salacious details, a lot of with the wiretaps in particular. So yesterday there is this point that Doug Schutte, former COO of Galleon Group, who is testifying in Raj's defense. There seems to be a fund in which Rajaratnam's family is the largest shareholder. What do you make of that connection and of the way that both sides handled that piece of information?
Well, on cross-examination, obviously, if you can establish any kind of bias, you do it. So here's a guy comes in, fresh scrub, testifying for the defense, ostensibly providing pro-defense information. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, excuse me. Isn't it true that Raj Rajaratnam put in $25 million out of a total of $35 million in your company, and you made $500,000 in a commission or fee on that? So that definitely kind of raises some kind of question, like, whoa. Also, the investment took place, if I'm not mistaken, just weeks, right, before Schutte testified for the defense. Yes, exactly. But the thing is, it's the kind of thing where you want to just kind of leave it out there and not, you know, necessarily over-highlight it. Because Schutte said there was absolutely no connection between the two events, meaning there was no connection in the fact that he accepted this money from Rajaratnam's family and the fact that he chose to testify as a defense witness. Exactly. But that's hard to believe. It is a little hard to believe. And the fact of the matter is, I think it's interesting. What would have been a bigger defense victory did have a little bit of a dent put in it on that particular point. Why? Because they oversold the point to the jury, I think so. A little bit, yeah. And, you know, the jury walks away saying, wow, $25 million investment, you know, should we therefore question what he's saying a little more closely? So that's a loss for the defense. But then there were a couple minor victories. Well, minor victories. Or not even necessarily minor. First of all, it's interesting when you compare law and then just common sense and getting one or two jurors on your side. The fact of the matter is the man only traded, you know, 1% of his trading is made up of the supposedly bad, illegal behavior. Now, as a lawyer, I'm here to tell you, 99% of the time I always drive within the speed limit, and this one time you caught me going 90. That's only 1% of my driving. So what, legally? Okay, the question is, did you violate the speeding laws that time? But you feel like the jury could be sympathetic and say, look, okay, he made one mistake with one set of trades, but his whole career has not been. Well, it's not even that. That's a good point, but here's a better point. Why is somebody who traded $172 billion worth of total trading, right, managing, I think, at $1.8 billion, why is he in the world would he do something wrong with respect to 1% of the time? So it's really like a mental intent thing. I mean, seriously, think about that. Why would he do that? Right, it doesn't make sense. It's too small an amount to be bickering over or to have put his career at danger for. Exactly. Why would somebody risk their entire career, blah, blah, blah? And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the reality is he really was, even if you think in an ill-advised way, he was using this mosaic of information, and you go right back to the song sheets that they have been singing off of, Deirdre, all the way through the case. All right, we don't have a ton of time left, unfortunately, Doug, but just as far as what you've seen so far this week, which side is doing a better job, prosecution or defense? First of all, I have to say I think that the defense is defending the case very well, honestly, because, again, they've thrown around all the correct theories. It's not non-public. It's really not material. It's only 1%. And as I've said earlier, they just need to poke the holes, right? One thing has to stick with one person, okay? Because we're on two different levels. We're not necessarily talking about getting a not guilty and walking them flat out of the building. It's about creating doubt. Well, how about getting a hung jury? A deadlock, which means they have to retry the case, do the whole thing over. So that could be tough. And then one last point I want to make that I thought was interesting. I don't know how true or credible it is because I read it quickly, but apparently there was testimony that he lost over $60 million in a particular trade. Now, the significance of that is less that he lost the $60 million, but more, why didn't the government tell us that? a juror might say. So when a jury feels that the government's trying to hide something that hurts them, that can hurt the government.
And feels like Raj Rajaratnam, the jury could see him eventually as a victim.
And there was one character witness in his favor that said he donated from a Harlem children's organization.
Sure, Jeffrey Canada. He's very well known in New York.
So it gave him a little bit of, he's not so horrible.
He's a likable guy, and he gives to charities and worthwhile charities.
So you said it was a story. I call it a soap opera.
All right, very good. Well, we're going to wait for your insight on the next installment, Doug. Thanks very much. Doug Burns joining us there, former federal prosecutor, with his insight into the Raj Rajaratnam trial.